you're concerned about anything puts the wall to the end zone on one side, just also play the route.
Well, first off, it's got a great tradition. Growing up, going to Fenway Park, people around baseball, seeing some of the great games played, in that stadium. And then as I got older, I had an opportunity to go see the Cubs play in Wrigley, and just the surrounding area, the restaurants that are in the area. It's just got a great vibe there, right in that neighborhood. It's a very unique place with an unbelievable history, and so it's a great opportunity for us. I'm also excited for Buckeye Nation to get to the game and the fans to be there as well and experience that, and to get an idea what kind of presence we'll have at the game. I've been a part of teams that have played at Yankee Stadium and then over in San Francisco where the Giants play, and it is different. It's a different feel, but it's a great opportunity for our team, and ultimately there'll be 100 yards of football field, and there'll be stands, on both sides, and we'll compete. So, we're excited about it, and we'll be practicing on the turf this week or on the grass this week to simulate what it'll be like there.
Far left, Joe Nugent, WCMH.
With Trey averaging an extra yard per carry on the ground through 9 games compared to last year, have you seen him look a little different at all this year?
I think he's running very well. I think he's running with power. I think he's playing well without the football. He's shown that he can do damage around the edge. He can do damage up the middle. Great in pass protection. So I think he's playing at a high level, and I think that he and Quinchon are a big part of, or a great example of what it means to be unselfish. And that's a big part of our run here in November and at the end of the season. Not worrying about touches, not worrying about carries, not worrying about those types of things, just knowing that, the number one goal is to win. And usually when you have that attitude, you find a way to win. And I think that both of those guys have been very unselfish this year, and they're both playing very well.
Over to the right, Don Sperry, WBNS.
Coach, obviously you talked last week with November coming in and everything. Just your mindset now, happy with what you saw Saturday, and how important is it to keep it going with 3 games to go, and obviously big goals that are going to be coming?
Yeah, well, first off, what we've done leading up to this point really has nothing to do with what's going on moving forward. It's all about what we do moving forward. But coming out of last week, I felt like, we showed some consistency, which is important. When you think about consistency, people say, well, a team flashes or a player flashes. That means they've shown that they can do it. Consistency means you're doing it over and over again. It becomes who you are. And we won the turnover battle, won the rushing yards, won the explosive plays. When you do that, you give yourself a chance to win by the margin we won on Saturday. So we got to keep building. We got to stay consistent. The players, the coaches got to continue to bring energy. This time of year, you got to be at your best. And there's a lot that comes with that. And every day you got to bring it. You got to continue to upgrade. You got to, find out ways to continue to build on what you have and find new wrinkles along the way, but allow the players to play really fast, and the leaders got to lead. And so all those things, lead you to, where we are right now. And, it's November. We want to be undefeated in November. And, I think our guys know exactly where we are in this right now. So we need a good week of work here ahead to Northwestern.
Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Ryan, I know you don't pick when you play. I'm well aware of that. But there's been some fan backlash. People think too many noon games in a row. This one technically is going to be an 11 a.m. local out there. How many noons or too many noons? Do you guys care? What's your thought on time of day and all these noon games?
Well, listen, I got to deal with a lot of fan backlash for other things other than the times of games. So I'm going to leave that for other people to deal with. I got other things I got to deal with. Whenever they tell us to play, we're going to play. It doesn't matter where it is. It could be in a baseball field. It could be 11 a.m., could be at night, whatever it is. We're going to put the football down and go play, and I'll worry about the team.
Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Just to build off that, just out of curiosity, what do noon games do in terms of recruiting on game day that makes it more difficult than maybe otherwise if you had a 3:30 night game opportunity? Is there a big change in what you're able to do or how many guys you're able to get?
One thing, the time of game sometimes can affect just who comes into the, who's able to make it from out of state, a little bit further away. That's about it. And it's just the one thing that we've done, we know that we have these noon games here in the back half of the season. So we've just been really working hard on getting guys to bed early at night and then waking them up early in the morning just to kind of get their biorhythms in order. They've done a good job of that. So that's about it. Other than that, we're playing football.
Yeah, real quick, I talked to him on Saturday after the game. He talked about his willingness, like a mindset, a servant mindset that he has in everything in his life. It's allowed him to take the next step to the blocker and really kind of, find his place on this team. What have you seen from G in his transition just throughout his time here?
Everybody has their own journey, and I'm not sure that G, ever could have conjured up the journey that he's had since he's been here. I won't get into it, but he's had loss in his life. He's had success. He's had changes in his life, and he's gone on a journey, and, it's found him where he is right now. And he's having an impact on the field. He's having an impact off the field. And I'm proud of who he's become as a young man. And that's a big part of this job is, helping young men find their way on their path. And he's done that. And great to see him play well, great out of champion this past week and get a touchdown catch. We're going to need him. Going to need him this week. Going to need him moving forward. So, older veteran guys that have been through different things help you because of their experience on the field, but they also just help you emotionally just work through the season, some of the challenges that come because everybody has challenges. And he's been through his. And so great to see where he is right now and take some things in his life and turn them into real positives.
Right behind him, Andrew Gillis, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, what did you see from Carson on Saturday? How did he grade out in the second game?
He was solid. I felt like, he's taken the next step at guard, playing against a front where it was a lot of, we call bear front, which is, really 5 down. There's a lot of one-on-one blocks there. So you got to sustain your block a little bit longer. But overall, I felt like he was solid. I felt like he took the next step, in the progression of playing guard as a starter. And, we'll have another week of work here, but, he came out of it healthy, which is good because he did have that one moment where he's kind of got a little scary there, but he's fine now. And so another week of work, another week of experience at playing guard will go a long way.
It would be really beneficial for him to have learned behind Luke Wickler, but with Seth, you said, he's learned a lot from him. What specific lessons has he taken from him?
I think there's a lot you can learn there about, not just the position and the technical parts of playing the game, but also just the preparation, the practice habits, how to handle certain situations, being resilient, persevering through, good times, bad times, working through issues. When you're with the offensive line, sometimes you're going to get into a game and see things that maybe hadn't shown up, in practice or the week before. And so navigating through all that is part of it as well. And with confidence and not losing your aggressiveness. So, there's a lot there, obviously with the technical parts of the game, but also just emotionally understanding how to attack it.
Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, Maurice Claret's been around the program a bit now. What is he doing for you, for the team, for players, and what was the thought process in bringing him back?
I have a lot of respect for Maurice and, where he's come in his life. And this is somebody to me who, has helped out other programs. He's done a great job with UConn basketball. And he's a guy that I like having around our players. I like talking to him. I love his mindset. He brings a toughness, a seriousness that, and a credibility with our players that I think gives us an edge. And I like having him around our program. I got a lot of respect for the things that he's been through and overcome and the success he's having in his life now. And again, I think he's an asset to our program. And so, he comes, once a week, he'll come around and watch some practice and then come to the games. And I think our guys have really, latched on to him.
Separate from that, you do a lot of studies. Have you done any studies about the slip rate on the turf in Ohio Stadium compared to nationally? Is that something you guys have looked into at all?
So we've looked into a lot of things, and one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted the field out here on the practice fields to be the same exact style that's in the stadium. And so after, each game, we'll look to see if there was any of that going on, and then get back with the folks at the company and make sure that all the tests are coming back the way that they should. And so we've been asking those questions. They've come in, they've taken, things in or taken things out. They put things in to make sure that it's right for our guys. And so we'll always look at that every week to make sure it's right.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, just after watching the film, how did you evaluate Edric's first start, and how do you think he can build off of that?
I thought there was good there. There was obviously the one silly penalty that he'll have to learn from. But overall, I thought there was really a lot of flashes there for somebody who's not played inside a whole bunch in his career. He's got strength. He's got power. He ran to the football. Didn't quite grade out, but I think there's a really bright future there at 3 technique for Edric.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
When developing the deep ball as a quarterback, what's the more difficult thing in trying to learn and developing the overall arm strength it takes to get it there, or maybe the timing it takes to develop that with your receivers?
Yeah, a big part of it is footwork. It's the footwork. It's being able to, time up your footwork with the route. And that's something we're going to continue to work through and with Will on. I think he's thrown some really good balls down the field, and then sometimes been a little bit late with his feet. So we'll keep working on that because, when his feet are right, he throws a good ball.
Will has talked about just adjusting to playing with these types of receivers, right? Where just throw it over to let him run under it. It just seems like sometimes where maybe he underthrows it. Where is he in this kind of developing that and getting used to playing with receivers like this, where you do kind of got to throw it out there and let them go get it a little bit more often?
Yeah. I think he's adjusted now. He's been with these guys for a while. So I just really think that it comes down to footwork, and getting in and letting it go. And because when his feet are right, he throws a really good ball down the field. So that's something that we got to keep building on and growing on. And I think it was the same thing on Saturday with the long ball to Carnell. Not that it was a bad throw. It just, it could have been throwing a little bit more juice. And I think if the footwork's a little bit better, it's probably a little bit more accurate.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Ryan, you've talked a lot about making sure you have change-ups throughout the season. Is that any more of a premium in a year where you might play the volume of games you could play this year? Is that any more on your mind? Because, you play a team in late December, the book they might have on you could be a little more expensive. You want to make sure you're kind of peppering in more of those change-ups throughout the year.
I think it's something we talk about a lot, where you can get yourself to a point where you do too much and then you start to lose your identity, or you can do too much of the same thing and get caught. So there is a fine line there and a balance. And, like you said, based on how many games you end up playing, I think you have to figure that into the equation of what you're doing. And, making sure you put the right people in the right spots, making sure you're doing what your identity is. But then, like you said, having enough change up so that, you're keeping people off balance. And but I think it could go both ways. You can get that too much down the road, and then you lose your identity halfway through the season. I've seen that, or 3/4 of the way through the season. So it's something we're keeping a close eye on.
You think this staff generally has done a pretty good job with finding that balance throughout the season?
I do. Yeah, I do. And then I think, we've got a good balance right now, but time will tell. And so we'll keep swinging at it and making sure that we're doing everything we can and learn from, things that we've done well in the past and things we got to do better.
Andy Backstrom, Lettermen Row.
Yeah, Ryan, 9 games in. How comfortable are you with the backup quarterback situation right now? What prompted the change from Devin and Julian on that third as well?
Yeah, we want to get those guys as many reps as we can. We'd like to get both of those guys reps. And, in that moment, I felt like it was a third down. I wanted to give Julian that opportunity to go ahead and take a third down. And I thought he used it as an opportunity to scramble and make a play, and then didn't quite keep the thing moving. We wanted to throw the ball a little bit with Julian to see how he did, because hasn't really done that a bunch in games. Just missed one, and he and Brandon didn't connect. Would like to see him get a first down there. But I think, that was a great opportunity for him. I'd love to continue to be able to do that, but as time goes on, you get less and less opportunities. We got to make sure we're winning games. So, he and Devin are both working hard every day in practice, getting, Devin right now is our backup, but Julian's, pushing hard. And so we'll keep evaluating it every week and see where those guys are at.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, we saw more of Quinshaw and Travion on the field together. What went into kind of building that package beyond some of the short yardage stuff you've done? And then also Travion's catch. We've seen him catch balls, maybe not in that fashion before. Just kind of expanding the offense a little bit there.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. And Travion really has worked hard on his receiving skills. He spends a bunch of time on the jugs, running routes. He had spent a bunch of time running that route over the years. We never really got to it in the game. So we were kind of laughing that, at some point we had to run that route because we had worked on it for like a couple of years and it just never came up. And the look was right, and I thought he really executed it well. A little slant and go on a linebacker, which we felt like was a mismatch for us. So well done there. But yeah, I mean, when you have guys that are playing well without the football in their hands like they are, and they can do multiple things, not just carry the ball, it gives you more versatility to expand those packages.
Stefan Kreisnick, Cleveland.com.
Talked about this a little bit on your radio show last week, but could you take us through the backstory of the bricks tradition you guys do at the practice, and kind of how that started and why that became a thing this year?
Well, I think when you start the season with, so much talk about expectations and a bunch of guys that come back for a certain reason, I think it's easy to start focusing on like down the road, kind of where we are now. And in order to, make sure the guys understand that the work that we're putting in August and September as we're building up the season and building up our foundation, all those days mattered, and that we had to continually work on that because, how do you know how your foundation is? You go through a storm and you find out what's left when, you wake up the next morning. Well, it's the same thing. We knew that we're going to be storms along the way, and there's going to be big games along the way. And all those days and those bricks that we put in the foundation are going to be what matters the most. And ultimately it comes down to our foundation against the opponent and all the work that we've put up into that moment. You don't just show up and think you're going to play in a game. You got to put all the work in and build a foundation up to that point of the fundamentals and the reps and all those things. So after each practice, we hand somebody a brick, they go over, they put it, in the foundation. But we also take pride in it. Like, you got to make sure that it's real tight in there, because you can't just put a brick in the foundation. If someone's just lazily putting a foundation in, when a storm hits, it's going to fall apart. Well, it's the same thing with the team. If you put a lazy day in, or you're not really having a lot of detail in your work and you just kind of let a day get away because you're going through the motions, it's going to catch us down the road. So it's a little bit of a, metaphor to making sure that we show up every day and put the work in.
That's something the coaches came up with, or players?
Yeah, something that, in preseason camp that, I kind of shared with the leadership committee, and they really embraced it.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, I know Jordan Hancock was a big part of what you guys did defensively last year with his versatility, but it seems like he's added even more this year. How much progress have you seen with him adding different things to his toolbox, and how impactful is that for you guys and for him down the line?
Well, he's allowed us an opportunity to be more versatile, and also build depth in the secondary, because he's been able to play multiple positions. And having the 3 safety system does give us some opportunity to move guys around to play multiple positions. But that doesn't necessarily mean you can just do that. Jordan has shown that he can do that. And, the more versatility that he can bring, the more versatile our defense can be, and the more options that our guys have back there. So, I've been impressed with the fact that he's been able to make that transition pretty smoothly. And I think his skill set, lends well to, building value to him as a player down the road too, being able to play nickel, being able to play safety. Certainly helping our team right now.
You guys talked about this, the word used, re-engineering of the defense. You talked about putting your best players in the right positions to make plays. How impactful was Jordan when you guys were thinking about how you want the secondary, how you want this to look going forward?
That was a part of it. Yeah, that was part of it. There's a lot of conversation that comes with that, but him having versatility is a part of that. It does allow us to do some things that maybe weren't able to before. But then again, you go back last week and he's back at nickel and doing a great job there. So, that is a part of it though. We want to make sure that our most impactful players are in the right spots, in the most important times.
Spencer Holbrook, Lettermen Row.
You guys ran I think with the jack or a hybrid guy for 4 plays there with Mitchell. Purdue had some success against it, but how do you balance seeing that team had a little bit of success against that changeup with also understanding that putting it on film and learning from it is actually positive in the long run?
Yeah, well, when Tyleek was in question early in the week, we felt like it was something that was an option for us to go to, where you take one of the tackles out of the game and put the jack in the game, Mitchell or CJ. And as you know, Jim has done this in the past. And so we looked at it, and we're going to continue to look at it. We think that it gives us a little bit of different spacing up front and provides our guys an opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of not as much reading, but, hitting the gap and trying to get, some penetration on things. But, we'll see how it fits moving forward. There were some things that we did that, were good, but some other things that, we got to execute better, but, it was the first time we kind of put it out there. And so we'll look to build on it from here and see where it goes.
Adam King, WBNS.
When you look at, I know Heisman doesn't matter to you guys in the building, but it's obviously, a trophy that you can add and helps in recruiting. Do you feel that your players are getting enough Heisman hype? I mean, there's a lot of talent around the program, and there's nobody really in the top 6, top 8 conversation for the number 2 team.
Well, when I think about the Heisman, I think about the most outstanding player in college football. And I think sometimes it can come down to statistics, which I think is unfortunate, but that is what it is. And I know that our team, we've had Heisman finalists before. This team's worried about winning, and that's really the only thing they're worried about right now.
Austin Ward, the podcast.
And when you think about kind of the number of players that played on Saturday against Purdue and then some of the experimentation with the scheme, and we spent all year talking about the length of the season and building depth. And Bill asked about scheme, are you more willing to do that earlier in games than you have been previously in your tenure?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say though. Yeah, I think, we have a more veteran group, that understands what we're doing. I think when you have, a bunch of guys that have played in the system for multiple years, it is a lot easier to, kind of look at some different things or jump in and out of stuff, knowing that, you already have X number of reps put away playing this style of defense. So maybe looking at something else isn't a bad idea. But then again, it can distract you from your, your fastball. So, this is a group that's played a lot of football and they're smart and they're good. So as time goes on and these games continue, we're trying to figure out, what is next. And those are all really good conversations.
So if the Jack, for example, if they are Purdue's having a little bit of success there, and it's a 1 possession game at that point, it feels like maybe in the past, it's 4 or 5 possessions, then the backups will come in. Are you holding your breath? Are you willing to take some chances in that, knowing that in the long run you're probably going to win? Or what's going through your mind if the experiments that I'm calling them aren't working perfectly?
Yeah, well, I really felt like even last week, talking to the guys coming off of the Penn State game, like we have to play depth. We got to get them in the game early, and we got to play them. And so, if there are ways to do that by calling a grouping in the game, whether it's an offensive grouping, whether it's a defensive grouping, and just saying, all right, in the 3rd series we're going in the game, the decision's already been made. Coaches want to make sure they win the game, and that's kind of the number one thing for everybody. But at the same time, playing depth is important. I thought we did that in this game. It was a focus coming out of the Penn State game. We wanted to make sure that we played depth in this game, and let some of those guys get in there, because you just never know when these situations are going to come up here as we head down the home stretch. So we'll continue to look to play depth, but obviously the number one goal is to win the game.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
And your pace on offense this year is slower, just plays per minute and stuff like that. Is that a product of the rules change? Is slowing it give you sort of an advantage? What do you think can maybe contribute to that?
Yeah, I mean, our offensive plays are significantly lower this year. There's no question about that. I think we're right around maybe 65 or maybe 64. And just when you think of years past, maybe not in the last year, but I mean, we're definitely less, or down on number of plays, which isn't always easy for the guys who want touches. And so that's another part of the conversation about guys being unselfish. The number one goal is to win the game. We feel like huddling allows, an opportunity, we don't have to worry about the signals or anything like that, which completely takes that part out of the game, which has become a big part of college football up until this year and continues to be. So that's one thing that, we just said, we're going to have the ability to do that. There's other times you've seen us go a little bit faster where we can go into a no huddle situation. And when that's appropriate, we'll do that as well. And so I think there's a give and take on all of that. How many plays you're trying to get during the season plays into the conversation, but then also schematically, and how you operate.
What does it require you to do by having fewer plays? Like getting more efficient or
Yeah.
situational or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you're it becomes more like the NFL in that situational football becomes critical. You have to be, very, very efficient. But it also allows you to control the game and, allows you to, really help the defense with the number of plays they're on the field and keep a defense that's much fresher. So all those things come into play. I mean, you think about the way that the Penn State game played a couple of weeks ago. You start with the ball back. We had the one long drive, field goal, and then they have their long drive, and then we have the ball back with 5 and change left, and that was it. That was the fourth quarter. We've been in fourth quarters before where there's probably been 6 or 7 possessions. It's just a different style of game. But when you can run the ball and control the ground game, then you can control the game. And right now we feel like we're able to do that, and we're also helping the defense.
If I can just clarify, when you said it takes away the signaling, the huddling, what do you mean by that? Or
well, now we can speak into the headset to the quarterback who's in the huddle, so that we don't have to worry about signaling.
Jeff Gilbert, Press Pros.
And Coach, distractions and stuff. Some things have been mentioned that can be distractions, Heisman, noon games, all that kind of stuff. The way you guys played against Purdue would suggest that these guys are focused. How do you feel about their focus 9 games in, and is it where you want it to be, and do you have to worry about it as much as you maybe did early in the season?
Well, it's something that we talk about a lot. And I think our leaders are the ones that have to lead the way on this. And to block a punt early in the game kind of jump-started us, which was great. But we know that we have to be playing our best football right now. And, people call them letdowns or whatever they are, after a big win. You see some teams across the country and, because you have to sustain a certain level over a period of time. And, it was important for us to play well in this game, to play well in the first half and then continue to play well, because again, is it who you are or is it just something you did? You had a good game, or are you consistently playing at a high level physically and executing at a high level? So we talked to our team all about it. They're still 18, 19, 20. Some guys a little bit older, year-old guys, but you got to bring it every week. And that's what championship football is all about. And, every week for us is like the playoffs right now. We're fighting for a chance to get to Indianapolis. So, it's always a topic of conversation, and it's gonna come down to our seniors and leaders and obviously how they, echo that message. And because, the players are the ones who have to play. They're the ones who have to do it on the field. And, give them credit for being consistent up to this point. But, like I said before, nothing we've done up to this point matters anymore. It's what we do moving forward. And I know that these guys are going to come in with a good week of practice here at 2:30.
Deep left, Noah Weisskopf.
Ryan, Northwestern, after just watching their tape, what stands out to you about them specifically?
And we've always had good games against Northwestern. Just most recently, a couple of years ago, when we played, Ryan Field, and the weather was a tough day, but it was, I think the final was 21-7, and it was everything we could handle to get out of there with a win. We played them in the Big Ten championship game. It's very similar to those teams. They're very sound in what they do. Their scheme is very sound. They're built from the inside out. And they're gonna make you win the game. They're gonna force you to earn it. And so they're a very good team, and a Big Ten team on the road, and you're in November, so we have to play well. And we always feel like it's about us, but we want to know our opponent, and they're always well coached.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
It looked like Donovan Jackson took another step forward as playing tackle. Was that your impression? At what point do you think it'll be that he's actually a left tackle and not a left guard trying to play left tackle?
I actually brought that up this past week. At what point does he become a tackle? Because I think he can be a very good tackle. And I think he has versatility, showing versatility. So, he's just increasing his value overall, not only to this team, but for himself individually. And, we talked about, I don't know exactly what his weight's at today. I'll go find out, but, trimming a couple pounds, just, when you're in there as a guard, you're working in a smaller space, a little more of a road grader, trying to move 3 techniques and noses, where now you're on the edge, a little bit more length, a little bit more athleticism. And so, but he is athletic. He has length and he can move his feet. So just doesn't have the experience of somebody who's played multiple years at the position, but he's played up front, and every time he's out there, he's getting better. He's a quick learner, and it's going to be a big part of our November right here is how Donovan plays at left tackle.
I looked at the forecast 10 to 15 mile per hour winds on Saturday.
Okay, good. It's about 70 degrees less, or 70 miles an hour less than last time we were there.
What was that game like as a coach,
Oof.
knowing that you had to throw out 3/4 of your game plan?
Yeah, you learn. You learn to always have, the ability to go wildcat. You better have that in November and it might have been October, but in the Big Ten, because we came out for pregame warmups and the punter kicked it. The ball went straight in the air and landed on our side of the line of scrimmage, and I had to grab the ref and say, "What did that happen in the game?" Because I didn't even know the rule on that. And so what ended up happening was when the wind was in our face, and Northwestern did the same thing. They were we're trying to eat up the clock and huddle, and then when the ball was behind us, we were trying to go no huddle so that we could punt the ball and throw the ball with the wind behind us. But even when the wind was behind us that day, it was a challenge. So CJ did a great job pulling 2 big runs for us, and that's kind of what bailed us out. And but that was a nightmare of a day for sure.
I think it's good to go.
Tyler, we're ready to go.
Final questions, Tim May, Lettermen Row.
Yeah, just 2 quickies. Thanks, Jerry. Number one, will y'all go to Wrigley Field on Friday afternoon? I mean, it's a baseball park's totally different from a football stadium. I know you know that and stuff, but sight lines and stuff. Is that important to you to maybe get the team there?
We usually don't, but we are going to because it is unique.
And well, I mean, just what do you want the guys to see more than anything else? I guess when they're in there.
Yeah, I'd like for them to see just the makeup of it. I want them to see the turf. I want them to see where the infield is filled in with some of the sod. I'd like for them to see how we're going to handle halftime. We're going to be in the bullpen, not going up into the locker room. There's just some different things that I'd like for them to see, and then also show them a little bit about what it's like, because it is going to be different. It's going to be a different feel there. It's a baseball park. It's different than a football stadium. So do I think it's a big deal? No, but a lot of people do that. They bring their team to the game or to the venue the day before. We don't usually do that, but we will on Friday.
Another thing, every week we see something new from this offense. You kind of got asked about it earlier, just about evolution of things. And have you been happy with what you've been seeing from the standpoint of one week to the next, like maybe throwing the ball downfield with the running backs a little bit more than you have in the past and things like that? Just what's your mandate there, I guess, to Chip more than anything else?
Well, I think there's been a lot of things that we've done well. I think there's other things that we got to continue to improve on. I think back on some of the things we've done well, and I think getting the ball to our playmakers in space has been good. I think, we've shown that we can be physical up front running the football. I think adding Will to the run game has made a big difference. We're continually pushing the ball down the field. And, I think that stretching of the field vertically, horizontally is going to be important as we move into November. But, being able to control the game by running the ball is, of the utmost importance. And that goes back to the conversation about huddling. You're controlling the game when you can run the ball and continue to get first downs. And not very different, but somewhat different than just in the past when, it was no huddle and, 35-28 or those type of scores. So, there's a lot to continue to improve on. There's been some really good things there. The challenges are going to continue to increase.
Is there a sense, though, that every play, like you talked about now, every play is sort of precious in its own right? I mean, there's so fewer of them.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, I think that's important. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah, I think every single detail matters of every single play more and more. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It allows us to trim down on the number of plays we practice and put more focus on execution.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great, Coach. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Thanks for Ryan. What's Aaron Scott's status?
Aaron,
No, I don't.
No, he's
I like the
great.
story though.
But wasn't that interesting?
Very interesting. Thank
All
you.
right, folks, thanks again for being here. We'll open up the floor for Kelly, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
It just looks like Travion is running really, really hard, really effectively, and doing the other stuff, walking and all that stuff. That's the first year here, so I don't know if you would know the difference. But how impressive has he been? What does a guy like that give you?
Well, he's an extremely versatile back that can play all three downs for you. So, he has the ability to run the ball up inside the tackles because of his physicality, but he has speed, long speed, where you can use him on perimeter runs, and he's really a weapon in the passing game. You saw us use him a little bit more in the passing game, and we're starting to get a better understanding of what he can do and how he can help us. It's a long season, so we haven't really had to put a ton on both him and Q's plates just because we probably have played. We're at the halfway point right now of the season. So the fact that those guys have contributed the way they have, they really kind of feed off each other. But I think he's a complete running back, and add to that his ability on third down and pass pro pickup, which I think he's been outstanding at. I don't know if there's a better run blocking or pass blocking back in the country than Trey right now. So he gives you everything that you want in a running back.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Ryan was talking about a lot of deep ball is footwork. In the 9 months since Will's been here, where was his footwork maybe when you first got here? Because I know he was here before you, versus like where it is now in terms of executing, doing the ball down the field.
I've seen Will get better each week. And Ryan's right. Footwork is a big part of it, but also knowledge and understanding of what you're doing. Sometimes when you go back to the first couple of days of spring practice where you're not sure where all the receivers are supposed to be, I've always learned a long time ago when your head's moving, your feet aren't. So when he's kind of thinking about where are the people supposed to be, maybe his feet aren't where they're supposed to be. So you always have to match your footwork with the timing and depth of the routes that you're running. And I think as he gets more and more comfortable with what we're doing, I think you're starting to see him, play at a really high level. I think he's had 3 or 4 straight games at 80% completion. He's doing a really good job in that, but there's still improvement, and he knows that. So I think if, we finally can get it all together, it's going to be really impressive with what Will can do.
Whether it was the Cardinal one this past week or there's been some with Jeremiah or the Cardinal one against Pitt State, was that more of a footwork issue or a timing?
No, I think the one with Cardinal was a blown coverage. You came out and he did a great job. It was covered was too deep. You're not going to get a deep ball versus too deep. And all of a sudden the DB for some reason started running forward. So I think it kind of surprised him. When you look at the initial pre-snap, it surprised him. It surprised me. You're not gonna be able to make that throw, and you shouldn't be looking for that throw in that coverage. But all of a sudden, the DB for some reason didn't take 1 step. He took like 5 steps towards the line of scrimmage on a pass play. So I think that kind of surprised him more than anything.
Tony German, Buckeye Huddle.
More on Will. Jerry told me yesterday that he's the first Ohio State quarterback in however long to have 5 games of completing 80% of his passes. He's a 60% career passer before he got here. Scheme and talent around him can change that. But did you see when you saw him a 70%? Yeah,
actually, passer? Will said if he gets to play at noon, he can complete 80% of his passes. So I think the controversy's over. So you get a noon kickoff, he'll complete 80. So I think we can all. I know a lot of people have problems with what we're doing, but if it means the quarterback can complete 80% of his passes, we'll take it. So.
When you watched him before you got to know him here, did you see a 74% passer that he is now?
No, I just watched highlights of Will when I got. He was already here, so I wasn't recruiting him. It was just, I got everybody that was on offense. They put together a hit tape for everybody at every position. I got a chance to kind of buzz that, and then, a week later we were on the field. So, but I think with everything, his knowledge of the game continues to expand, and the more he understands and has a real good feel for what we're doing. Will has a lot of input in terms of what we do game plan wise. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you feel comfortable with? And as we get to know Will better and he gets to know us better, I think you're starting to see that kind of really mesh together. So,
accuracy surprised you?
No, because I've seen it in practice. And the other thing that Will can do, he does 2 things really well. Number one, he can see because he's so big. He stands in the pocket really, really well, and he's tough. And I think that's such an underrated quality for any quarterback. The ability to stand in the pocket while people are literally trying to take your head off. And not worry about the rush, but always keep your eyes focused downfield, looking for receivers trying to get open at certain times, or if it's an off-schedule play, trying to keep off-schedule plays alive. But I think that's part of Will's nature. That I think his toughness is an ability to see the whole field while he's in the pocket are two big things in terms of his accuracy.
Far right, Don Terry, WBNS.
Coach, this is kind of uncharted waters with the new playoff system and everything. From an offensive standpoint, how much of the offense is in? And are you holding things back because there's some huge, I mean, how do you manage all that?
Yeah, I don't think we hold anything back. I think our offense is always game plan specific in terms of who we're playing and how do we attack what they do. Each defense you face is somewhat unique, and so you can say, hey, this team's a little bit like this team, but not totally like that team. So I think it's not, hey, this is a really good play, let's not run it because we're going to need it down the road. It's, you have to win every game. And I don't think you can take that approach of let's save this for another game because you don't know how games are going to express themselves during the course of the game itself. So everything we do is just game plan specific, especially now that we've gotten into conference play.
It's pretty much in, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we could add stuff that I think we may have done in the spring, but we haven't used yet just because we haven't faced that defense yet.
Spencer Holbrook, Lettermen Row.
Chip, in 2022, your UCLA offensive line was semifinals for the Joe Moore Award. Today, this offensive line was named semifinals for that. Do you see similarities from the way that unit was playing and the way that Justin has your guys are playing right now?
God, you make me think back. I think they're different. I don't really, I've said it before, I'm not into comparing one group to another group. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool for those guys. That's a prestigious award. Those guys usually go unnoticed. That's the nature of the position. If you're an offensive lineman, they buy their clothes with True Value Hardware. They don't really get a lot of attention. They're not the guys that are out in the limelight like some of these other guys, but they work their tails off. I think that's the gist of any team that's going to be a really good football team has to be strong on both lines. And the fact that they've been recognized for that, that's something that's pretty cool. But now we got to live up to that standard every day. So
You guys don't put a lot of stock into those awards as coaches, but to see the way that those guys have responded since losing Josh as the play caller and the leader of the offense, how have you evaluated that? What do you think of the unit, the way that it's playing without Josh?
I've been really impressed, and I think really Donnie and Seth have really stepped up in that leadership part. And I think the two of those guys have really kind of led from the front. Two tough, hard-nosed physical players. Obviously, Donnie being selfish and moving from left guard to left tackle was a really big deal for us. And he continues to work at his craft every day because, I think everybody just thinks O-line, but all five of those positions are really different. And it's not easy to go from one position to another position. And the fact that Donnie's done that has been great. And I think Seth really, because he calls all of our identifications and directs what our blocking schemes will be, has really kind of fell into that leadership role for us. And I think our guys are rallying behind those two.
All right, Dave Holmes, WSYX.
Ryan talked a little bit about his upbringing at Fenway Park and historic baseball venue. Just wanted to get your thoughts on playing a game at Wrigley.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I've seen just highlights of a football game in there, and I've been to a game at Wrigley when I was out recruiting once. But the fact that you can play in settings like that is pretty cool, and I think it makes it unique. Obviously, they're refurbishing their stadium, so they got to they got to either build the one that they did on campus or go to Wrigley. So the fact that we get to be the one team that plays in Wrigley, I think will be pretty cool, and I think our players will enjoy that.
Austin Moore, the podcast.
Chip, I know every game plan every week is different, contingent on the opponent, but it's felt like the last couple of game plans have leaned a little bit more on Will as a rushing threat. What's motivating that decision?
The defenses that the people deploy. Sometimes they always have an extra guy in the box, and if you run the quarterback, then that evens the numbers back out. It's as simple as that. Some teams don't do that, and other teams do that. So, it's just sometimes when you get, especially when you get in a conference play, I think there's a lot of people in this league that know how to stop the run. So, you got to be able to have a mobile quarterback, and it helps that Will has that mobility.
Bill Landis, Kings of the North.
Chip, do you ever iterate off a play or change something up kind of just for the sake of doing it to break a tendency or put something different on film, or is it always opponent specific?
No, it's always opponent specific, but you still self-scout yourself and what are we doing out of this formation and what is our run pass ratio and even within out of this formation all runs are this, and then that's always the the fine line. Well, we should do something different. Well, what we're doing is working. Why would we do something different? You know, so you kind of play that game and go back and forth with it. But we're constantly working on self-scout of ourselves and tendencies that we're trying to just understand. But some tendencies are good tendencies. You know, you could be, hey, you're 90% run out of this formation. You're also 90% success out of this formation. So, you know, do you not call that ever again because you think that they think that you think this? You know, you can get into that real dilemma of just, you know, it's still about executing and still about lining up and playing. So, but we do spend a lot of time on that. That's part of what our weekly game plan meetings are about.
Is there any more emphasis on that in a college football season that can now be 17, 18 games where you want to make sure you're sprinkling in different things so that if you get to game 17 and a team has a pretty expansive book on you guys film-wise that they can't, you know, key in on something you've done all year? Like you want to make sure you have those change-ups in there.
Yeah, there has to be some of those. But again, I think you can drive yourself crazy. When we put this on tape and they think that we can do this because they know that we can do that, they can't do that, then we do that, then I didn't make any sense what I just said, and that's what's going on in your head when you're starting to think about all that stuff too. So it's that process. You know, I still think you have to, part of being really good at it is what are we good at, and how do we continue to be good at it so that everybody in the stadium doesn't know, hey, they're running the ball over the right side on this play because that's what they always do. You know, I think you're still trying to mask some of those things, but you still have to play to your strengths.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Chip, you kind of off the question about Will's running. I think maybe it was last year or a couple weeks ago you mentioned you don't have to continue, you're not just trying to be power all the time. But how have you seen Will's progression in understanding or reading what defenses want him to do when it comes to handing off to Q or Trey and pulling, or is that more from you guys telling him you want you to pull this, or is it more?
No, it's a good question. We don't tell him we want you to do this or want you to do that. It's totally, a lot of that stuff is, if it's a read play, he has to read it out and how he sees it. Just like we don't tell him where to throw. You know, it's the play's called to the curl or the flat, but it depends. Does the defender defend the curl or defend the flat? Like you can't tell him before the play, throw the curl because I know the guy's going to chase the flat. Well, then he sits in the curl and you throw a pick and it's, coach told me to go there. You know, we didn't. We told you to read this player. So it's the same thing with some of the read plays that we run. And I think he does a really good job. You know, he was really well trained. I think Chris Kleiman does a great job, and Colin Klein did a great job at K-State. And, you know, so Will's got a really, really good understanding of our running game. You know, it was more of just learning the terminology here as opposed to what it was like there. But I think he does a really, really good job of that. And when we put something in new, it may be new to this unit, but it's not new to Will. It's just, oh yeah, we ran this. And then we'll go back and actually look at K-State tape with him and, you know, kind of pick his brain. How'd you read it? And how was it presented to you? And what's the best way for us to present it so that we can execute?
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
What do you see as the advantage from huddling more and just sort of playing at a slower pace of play on offense versus past couple of years? Your teams are able to run more plays per minute than you are now. Pace is a little slower. Just what's the advantage to that?
Yeah, I think you can communicate better. You know, so obviously the thing that's changed this season, and I think a lot of people have slowed down, is the ability for the quarterback to communicate with everybody before the play. You know, before it was just everything was driven by signals and everybody was looking to the sideline and then getting everybody on the same page. So there's some teams and some times when that's to your advantage. You know, I think more people do it to us because they don't want the ball in our hands. So that I think the game has we don't get as many possessions right now as we have in the past, just because I think both sides are doing it a little bit more. But I think the communication thing that you're allowed to talk to the quarterback up to 15 seconds on the play clock is one of the advantages of huddling.
Teams are doing it against you, but you guys have also done it. It seems like more. Does it give you an advantage to do the other team?
Yeah, it gives us an advantage again from being able to communicate. So what Will can talk to the offensive line about, you know what I mean? Like normally you'd send a play in, but he couldn't give them like, hey, these guys are 85% twist and boundary corner on this play. So make sure that we're really high alert for that. You know, so there's a lot more that goes on. It's not a two-way conversation because he can't talk back to you, but you know, we have a style of speaking in that situation so that we can communicate some different things. Before it was you just called the play and broke. Now you can give them a lot more information. You know what I mean? There may be a player who got injured the play before. Hey, there's a new left corner and it's number 15. We talked about him. We saw him on film. This is what he's susceptible to. Let's make sure we're attacking him when you know he's in, instead of you waited till you get to the sideline between series and go, hey, there's a new corner. And I didn't know he was in. But you can communicate that stuff now.
Tim May, Lettermen Row.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. Following up on that a little bit, or just on offensive plays, do you ever have times in games where you have to say to yourself, I got to be disciplined here. I got to call some run plays? I know it sounds kind of stupid, but I mean, to have the balance when you look at this lineup and with Jeremiah and Emeka and Carnell, and, you know, you could throw the ball 50 times a game and nobody would question that either. You understand what I'm saying? Does it take discipline to also stay with the run game?
I think it takes discipline to know what the defense is trying to take away from you. So, you know, for you to try to continue to throw it if they're going to play high safeties and light boxes, you know, you should be running it more than, you know, and when people are loading up the box to take away your run and saying, hey, we're not going to let you run the ball in the situation, and you are still trying to run the ball in the situation, that's where I think the discipline is. So sometimes it's not consecutive plays in a row or series. It's just kind of, what are they like? Because you take, say you're playing Northwestern, you have 9-game breakdown on Northwestern. This is what they've done for their last 9 games. But as you go into the really first, second, third series of a game, is what we saw in the last 9 games actually happening in this game? And if it is, then we're pretty solid in terms of our game plan. If not, then you may have to morph a little bit towards run or a little bit towards pass based upon how they decided they were going to come out this week. Because they may have come out in the previous 9 weeks and done this, but in your game, they're doing it a little bit differently. So it's the ability to make those adjustments and kind of lean one way or the other. You know, I think is the discipline part you're talking about, not just saying, well, we're just going to chuck it, you know, but if they're playing really deep and you're still trying to throw it deep, then that's not smart either, you know?
I don't mean necessarily throw it deep every time, but yeah.
Okay.
And
You just want us to throw it every time?
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine.
My philosophy, when in doubt, air it out. But following up, well, what you
You're not a Woody Hayes guy then, huh?
Yeah, no. Well,
Come on. You can't go both ways.
I grew up in Alabama and Texas. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not a Bear Bryant guy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
When you walk into a place like Wrigley Field, you seem to have a feel for history and stuff. I mean, Gale Sayers ran there. You know, Dick Butkus played there. You know,
Yeah.
Most people don't. They think they all played in Soldier Field and stuff. Do you think about that kind of where you are?
I will Friday because we're actually going to go to the stadium and get a chance to kind of look around and see what it looks like.
But does that add to the?
Oh, yeah.
To it too.
It always does. I mean, I love whenever wherever I've been, when you get a chance to go play in some of these iconic stadiums and players that you saw when you were growing up and play here. That's always a cool part about what we get to do. But yeah, it'll be fun. I think everybody's excited about playing this game in Wrigley.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, we will open it up with Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Hi, Will. Coach Day was talking about footwork and how that is paramount, like when you're throwing the ball. And he feels like when your footwork is on point, that you can really rip it. Can you get into that a little bit, your footwork, and where you feel like that's at right now?
Yeah, I think that's something that we've been looking at. And I think, you know, when I'm inaccurate with the ball, like you can see my feet kind of go dead a little bit. So we're just emphasizing this week of just keeping my feet alive, and, you know, whether that's, you know, changing up my drop a little bit on certain things, or just emphasizing keeping my feet alive in the pocket. You can kind of tell, like, you know, sometimes when I take a 5-step drop, like my feet are just alive, you know, and that's something we're looking at. And something I want to emphasize this week of just continuing to work on keeping my feet alive in the pocket, and, you know, no matter what the play is, whether it's a play action or or a deeper drop or a shorter drop, whatever it is, just keeping my feet alive, not letting them go dead and go flat. And that's kind of when I get a little inaccurate with the ball.
Deep right, Adam King, WBNS. Show me your hands again, those who need them.
I know that a Heisman is an individual award. I know that you guys are focused on stuff that is so much bigger, but there's a lot of talk out there about your stats compared to other guys that are maybe toward the top of the Heisman odds. Do you think that you should be in that conversation? Do you think other guys on this team should be in that conversation?
Man, I try not to think about that stuff. And, I'm not worried about it. As long as we're winning football games and the Buckeyes are scoring points, I'm happy. I think all that stuff kind of takes care of itself. And if you focus too much on individual accolades, then a lot of things get cloudy, and I've always been a believer in, if you take care of the things that matter, then, the individual accolades and all that kind of stuff will come, and the more I focus on my teammates and being the best teammate I can be, being the best player I can be for my teammates, being the best leader I can be, then things like that may come into consideration, but I'm not worried about it, man. As my stats, as long as I'm playing good football, grading out a champion and taking care of the ball, that's all I'm worried about.
Spencer Holbrook, Lettermen Row.
Kind of hard to follow it up with this, but the offensive line was named for semifinals with Joe Morrow today.
No.
You to see those guys get some recognition when usually it's skill guys that are getting a lot of those.
I think that's huge, and I think that speaks a lot to the work that those guys have put in. And they've caught some flack at times this year, and they've had to work through injuries and shuffle around a little bit. And but those guys have stuck together, man, and they've done an unbelievable job. And I'm so proud of them, and I'm really glad that they, I don't care about my own individual accolades, but I am really excited that they got that. I know it's only a preliminary semifinal thing, but the fact that they're getting recognized for the work that they're doing, especially as an O-line, they don't get a lot of praise and accolades. And, I feel like they only get really seen when they don't do their job. They don't really get the praise when they're doing a hell of a job out there. And I think they've been doing a great job, keeping me protected and getting the ball downhill and running the ball at guys. And I'm really happy for them.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Well, I think it might have been a couple weeks ago when you said that early on in your camp that you were taking some time to get adjusted to the RPO, the read game. Was there much of a transition in the RPO and read game from Kansas State to here? And if so, when do you feel like you got comfortable enough where you can pull it and you just know those reads so well as you can able to pull it less?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think there's really any one thing I can put my finger on. I got better at it, got a better feel for it, but it's a different system. There's different things that I'm looking at here. There's different ways that we're reading things. So I kind of had to relearn how we wanted to do them here. But at the end of the day, I do think that, RPOs are kind of a feel at certain times, and, just feeling leverage, feeling guys' eyes, where their eyes are at. And I think a lot of that goes back on experience. And, I've seen a lot of different looks. I've seen probably every sort of, technique a defensive end could play, a linebacker could play. So, you just can't make up reps, and I've seen it and I've had the experience, but, still could get better, man. And, still just need to continue to grind away and continue to feel those things out, because I'm not perfect. I think I've gotten better, and I think, my reads in the run game and the RPO game have been solid, but still could get better.
Stefan Kreisny, Cleveland.com.
Last week or so, Coach Days talked a bit about the Bricks Foundation that you guys have done after every practice. Why is that something that the players, kind of bought into and seem to care about as much?
Yeah, it's huge, man. It's something we talked about a lot in fall camp. And, I think it was one of our first meetings in fall camp. It was, we talked about building a foundation. And, if you don't have a strong foundation, your house, something happens, house is going to fall down. And you got to start with that foundation, have a strong foundation. And if you build that every single day and continue to just make it better and better and more stronger. And, we've kind of emphasized that, like, every single day matters, and I think that's one of the things that I like the most about that, that brick thing that we're doing is that, we can visually see that every single day that we're putting in is building up this little brick tower that, we're building. And it's a visual representation of all that work, you're putting in, because when you're in the moment, you don't really see it. It's one of those things that, like, you could work out for, 6 months and you see results at the end of those 6 months, but like in the process of that, you don't really, you're not going to just go lift some weights and drop 30 pounds and, look great in one day. Like it's a process, and it kind of, I think just throughout the process of things, like it keeps us grounded and says, this is why we're doing it. And, you look back after a couple of weeks and it's like, man, that little brick sculpture is, it's turning into something here. And, it reminds us that every single day, the work that we're putting in doesn't go unnoticed.
Andy Baxter, Lettermen Row.
What do you think of Travion's route on the outside there, the inside back route? And then also, you threw a lot to Deuce Vaughn at Kansas State. You got great running backs here that back in the passing game. Just what kind of an advantage is it to have those guys for you? And do you approach it any differently than starting for receivers?
I mean, yeah, you got to approach it a little differently, but I think, Trey's been grinding away at that, man. We all week we were working on that route, and he was getting extra work with it after practice. And I remember going back to spring, throwing balls to him over the shoulder and him catching and working on his ball skills. And he wanted to make that, more of part of his game and catching the ball. And I think he runs great routes. I mean, he broke that guy off. You put a linebacker on Trey. That's disrespectful. That's unfair. Trey's going to run right away from him. And I mean, you saw, I looked to the field and I tried to look the safety off with my eyes. And, as soon as I looked over there, 31 just ran, because he thinks I'm going to mech on the inside fade route. But, that just shows you that, having that, ability to put the running back out in space and, make a guy miss like that, it gives us a lot of different, new options. And, when Trey is able to, win on a route like that and get open down the field, that I think it's great. It's a whole new facet for our offense. And I think him and Q both run really good routes and catch the ball well. So it's good.
Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Well, you came to Ohio State as a 59% career passer. So you're at 74% right now. What would you attribute that to, the rise?
I think a lot of it's coaching and the way that I've been, taught here. And something, Coach Kelly's emphasized with me since I got here, man, was just completions, and how many completions are out there on the field that, it's just easy, and just take them. I feel like a lot of times in my career at Kansas State, I was trying to force things in windows or I didn't really need to. There's checkdowns all over the field, man, and getting the ball to Trey or G or Q in the flats and letting them run for 6 to 12 yards. I mean, there's some plays on Saturday where, I may have missed mech down the middle running one, on one play, but, like I check it down to Q and we get 6 yards out of it. And it's like, oh, we're in 2nd and 4, it's like, that's still a pretty good position to be in. There's just completions all over the field. And that was something I really emphasized in preseason training camp, I was shooting for 80% completion percentage every single day. That was something that, me and Billy kind of got together on, and like that was my goal. And I only achieved it a couple times, and it's hard, but I think that helped me so much. And just like, completions are devastating to a defense, whether it's a completion for 0 yards or a completion for 50, like it doesn't matter, just as long as you're getting the ball in your playmakers' hands. I mean, those defensive linemen are taught they got to run to the ball. They're getting tired. Like anytime we can get a completion is a positive for the offense, and I'm trying to look at it more that way. And, I think the way that Coach Kelly's tried to kind of drill that into my mind is kind of change my mindset on it a little bit. And it's helped me just be a lot more efficient in my passing game.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Will, lots of talk about you guys playing 6 straight noon games to end the regular season. What's your opinion on noon games? Do you like them, dislike them?
I kind of like getting up and rolling, man. There's no thought, I think sitting around sometimes, I have no control over that. I don't really mind. I'm going to play whenever they tell us to play. And, but there's something I kind of like about just getting up and going. There's less thinking involved. You kind of just get up. Sometimes when you're sitting around for those night games, you get a little, you're sitting in the hotel, and for me, it's more just I just get antsy. I'm like, man, I just want to go. Like I just want to go play this game. And I don't like sitting around all day just waiting. So I think there's good, obviously, the fans, would it be cool to have a night game? Sure. But man, I'm not worried about it. And I'll play whenever they tell me to play. And, it's all good.
You had the opportunity to play at a lot of different stadiums. Just what's it like getting to go play in Wrigley Field this week?
That'll be really cool. I've seen a game there one time. I think I was in like senior in high school. I went out there. I think it was actually at a camp at Northwestern. But that was a cool stadium, man. And it'll be interesting to play football in there, but I'm excited, man. It's a historic, landmark and in a really cool city. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a cool opportunity.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
I'm assuming that was a baseball game you saw, right?
Yeah.
How much confidence do you have in the left side of the offensive line now with Donovan and Carson than you did before the whatever game was before the Penn State game? Confidence. How much has it grown?
Yeah, it's grown. It's grown a lot. I don't think it's grown too much. I think I had a ton of belief in them before that game. I don't think my belief in them wavered at all. I don't think it's really changed. I think I believed in those guys. When Jimmy went down, obviously that's a tough blow, and then Zen goes down, and you got to shuffle guys around a little bit. I think a lot of people around, Buckeye Nation were concerned, and I really wasn't. I was kind of. I knew those guys would step up to the challenge, and I knew that they were ready for it. Carson's played a ton of football. I knew he was ready for the challenge, and he was fired up and excited. You could just see that look in their eye, man. They knew that they were going to go take care of business. And, after the performances they put up the last 2 weeks, I'm not surprised. I'm so proud of those guys with how they've, stepped into their new roles and done an amazing job, but I'm not surprised. And I think they have a lot more ahead of them, and I'm excited for them going forward.
If I remember right, Donovan was one of the people you talked to before you came here. Is that right?
Yeah. I think I talked to him. I think he told Coach Day that he was coming back like the first day I was here on my visit. So that was like one of the first things that I heard. I was like, oh, Donnie's coming back. Like that's big. So, yeah.
And just what were your impressions of them then, and how have they grown since you've really gotten to know them?
I mean, first time I talked to him, I was like, this guy's, a stand-up guy. Reminded me a lot of my close friends at Kansas State, and I was really tight with a lot of our O linemen. And he's, I just from the moment I started talking to him, I was like, this guy gets it. He's a smart kid. He's really grounded. Just and passionate and wants to be a Buckeye. He wanted to come back and be a part of this, and that was something I was like, man, like this is different. This team is special, and obviously he's a hell of a player, man, and he does great things on the field, but I think he's an even better guy off it.
And final question, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
On the footwork part of it, especially on the deep ball, how much did you maybe have to retrain and relearn some things when you first got here on some of that stuff, especially when executing deep throws?
A little bit. No, I don't know. It's kind of hard to like put any gauge on that. That's not really something that, I really thought about a ton of. Throwing deep balls is throwing deep balls, and either, you hit them or you don't. I underthrew the one to Carnell this weekend. I think sometimes I just, try to get a little too cute with it and try and place it. But when I do hit them, it's like, I just let it rip, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is just not trying to place the ball and just letting these guys run under it. 'Cause we have unbelievable team speed out there. And, when I get my feet moving and I don't let them go dead. As long as they're active and alive back there, and I just let it rip and let them run under it, that's when we have success. And I just need to continue to rep that and do that and see that in practice. And, I think we're getting better at it. I need to be better at it overall for those guys. 'Cause we got some stuff down the field, and we're going to be able to hit down here down the stretch of the season.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Go Bucks.
Thanks, Will. Mike, you good? You got him?